Welcome to Blender Frenzy. I am Justin, and I hope you are having a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend. And for Thanksgiving weekend, I thought we'd do something that looks like this. So you've just got a little bit of an animated e-card, I guess, for Happy Thanksgiving. You have the very simple animation of the individual pieces of the image popping in, as well as the appearance of the text being handwritten across the page, which is the main focus of this video. And if you haven't seen the last video, I go over how to separate the pieces of the image. So you separate the text and the images from the background, and then combine it all together in order to create this card in preparation for the handwritten animation and all of the other stuff that you see. So if you haven't seen that, I highly recommend watching that first. If you want to follow along exactly with my video, you can come over to blenderfrenzy.com, go to the freebies single downloads, and I have a new download for you. You can just click this and get the card that I'm using straight away. You can follow exactly with what I'm doing. If you want access to all of my downloads, you can go to the Blender Frenzies, which is a membership, so you can click sign up, and I've got 3 different memberships you can look at. Frenzy Freebies will have all the downloads for all of my YouTube tutorials to get you started following along exactly with mine. And just so you can see how we did this, we created this black and white animated mask with curves to give the appearance of this text being revealed. We did this in the 3D layout, so we actually are using curves. So you can see this curves, and we animated these curves that are basically little tubes that are going across the background. So we have the black background and the curves are completely white. And what that does is it will reveal, if I unhide that and bring the opacity down, you can see what it's doing is just revealing that text as those curves are being revealed. And the great thing about this method is you don't have to actually mimic the font or the text exactly. All you have to do is cover it with a mask and it will appear as it is already written. So when you're ready, let's get started. Okay, so step 2 is done. This is just so that we can have full control over any of these individual parts. We can animate them differently, and this is going to help the text to make it look like it's being handwritten across the page. For that, we need to go to the 3D view. So let's click this plus, do a general layout. I'm going to select everything, even though it's just a camera in there. I'm going to delete that. Shift A to add in an image, and then mesh plane. And then we want to choose my card 1. But before we do that, let's change principled to emission, dithered to blended, and everything else I think is fine. So let's double click this one. We can come over to material preview mode. And for some reason in Blender 4 and above, every time I hit the material preview, the first time I do it, it takes Blender forever. And this is something that I don't like with newer versions of Blender, is that things like this start cropping up. Blender 3.6 was just fine. I mean, lickety split. I could change all of these settings. And that's why I really like working with the LTS versions. Although 4.2 is an LTS version and it does still take quite a long time switching between modes for the first time for material preview and rendered and all that stuff. As you can see, it's still loading and it's just annoying.
2,000 years later.
And finally, man, that took like 2 or 3 minutes. Maybe even 4 minutes. I don't even know. But anyway, let's go to top mode and scroll in here. And let's see. I'm going to disable the grid. I think I'm going to also disable the 3D cursor and the origins. So to get this to look like it's being handwritten, we're going to do something that I haven't seen anybody else do. And that is we're going to create an animated black and white mask. Now, part of what I'm going to do has been done before, but not in the same way. So what you might be familiar with is the first part, and that is to add a curve. So let's go ahead and add in a Bezier curve. And then you can see the curve if we tab into edit mode here. You can see the curve has 2 points. Let's get our tweak going here. Let's select this one only, and there you go. So we have the curve and its handle points here. And this is the second point, and it's also got its handles. So we can change it and manipulate it like this. Now, the curve has a direction, which is going to be super important. This is the start and this is the end. To see the direction of the curve, we can come up here and then select normals. And now you can see these arrows are pointing in the direction of the curve. So this is the end and this is the start. As long as we get this in the correct position at the start, it shouldn't be a problem, but let's just make sure we do that. So I'm going to take this and put it up here on the top of the H. That's going to be where the first stroke is going to start. And then we'll take this and we'll put it down at the bottom here like that. And then we can get rid of the clutter by unchecking those normals again. Now, of course, this is too big, so we need to just drag these handles in. And we can also come up here and then say handles. We can either say don't show any handles, or we can say only the ones that are selected, or we can say all. I'm going to choose all, just so that we can click and drag the handles straight away. But I'm going to shift select and then just S to scale those in. And this one down here. And then we just have to manipulate the handles in a way that lines up with this. So I want to trace the H in a way that if someone were to write it, what would the strokes look like? So it would be right here, start to finish. And then this would be the next one, start to finish. And then this one would be the next one here, start to finish. So what I can do is just tab into object mode, duplicate this, make sure the start is where it needs to be and the end is where it needs to be. Tab into edit mode and then adjust our handles here. Object mode, duplicate, and then this one's the start. Tab into edit mode and then just bring this one up and adjust. Okay, and if we had any doubt, we can click those normals on. For all of them, actually, let's tab into object mode. We can just select all of them and then press tab again. And we can just, let's bring those normals down. So 0.01. There we go. And now you can see the direction each of them are going. Okay, so tab into object mode. And now to give thickness to any of these, let's start with this one. So let's select this one. Come to the data tab here. I'm going to pull this out a little bit. And I'm going to scroll down and we'll select geometry, and under bevel we see this depth, and then I'm just going to start increasing the depth. And Blender is thinking, I hope it's not going to crash because I forgot to save it.
6.5 hours later.
Okay, come on Blender 4.3. Okay, let's save it. I wonder if we can do this instead. If we go to solid shaded mode, obviously we can't see anything here. So let's actually select, can I do flat and then texture? There we go. Okay, so now hopefully we're not going to have too many issues with shading, but let's see, we can also do an X-ray. There we go. Just so we can see through, because that's going to be important as well. Now the depth we can actually click and drag to adjust. We can do it this way, but we can also come in here into edit mode, and you can see we can turn this as well, like that. We just want to make sure that the curves are covering each stroke with a fair bit of margin. But we can also scale individual points if we select them and press Alt-S, and you can see we can widen it or shrink it. I'm just going to right click that because I like this size for now. One thing I am going to do is subdivide this though. So I'm going to select this one and then shift select this one, right click and choose subdivide. That's going to add a point right in between those two. And then I'm going to put it here and then Alt-S to scale that in. And the reason I'm going to do that is because once this stroke comes down, it's going to reveal the text. That's how we're going to do it. It's going to be a mask that's hiding the text, and then it's going to reveal the text. So here, once it reveals it, if this is too large, it's going to reveal this cross stroke as well. And we don't want that. So we're going to just make it thin enough to where it's just kind of like that. But we don't want any of this over here, because if that's peeking out, then that will be revealed as well. So we have to adjust for that. Maybe we can do another subdivision here and bring this one down like that. Do another subdivision here. Oh, I actually have to select this one and then shift select that one, subdivide. There we go. And then bring this one up like that. Okay, I think that's going to be good enough. And just to give you an idea of what's going to be happening, we can tab out into object mode. And then at the start and end mapping down here, I can take the start and I can start to pull that out like this, and that's how we're going to reveal the text. So right here, it's going to be a black and white mask. This is going to be black, saying we're not going to show this part of the stroke, but then as it animates away, then we are going to be revealing it. So as it reveals it, it looks like it's being handwritten. Okay, so let's take these two, shift select and then shift select this one as the last one so that we can come to these settings again. The depth, I'm going to right click, copy to selected, and then we can adjust these in edit mode. These should be pretty simple, although we're going to probably do the same thing as this one. And to be honest, I'm going to actually just delete this one and then duplicate this one because we have everything that we need set up for the same type of thing. So these here in the middle, we just want to do the same thing. Just adjust them for this one. And when you press Alt-S, the closer you are to the actual point, the harder it is going to be to scale. Best practice is to hold your mouse over here, Alt-S, and then you have a lot more control. Okay, and let's just bring this over here. Okay, and then we can test that out with the factor start, like that. And let's go to this one, and I think we can just, we don't need to add any extra points to this one. Factor start, and then end. So that comes like that. So that is the idea. I'm just going to finish tracing the happy, and then we'll create a black and white animated mask, and I'll show you how to use that back in our video sequence editor. So again, I'm going to start with the strokes as if I were to be writing it myself with a pen. So we're just going to take this one, duplicate that, and put it wherever the start is. So this is the start, and then just edit that around. And to see this better, maybe we can actually just take that depth all the way down to 0 as we adjust all of this here. Now, if you haven't worked with curves before, this might be a little bit of a learning curve. Learning curve, get it? Yeah, that was bad. But I think the best practice is to put it at top and bottom and left and right. So just E to extrude that over here. Okay, and so this is going to go all the way up here like this, and then it's going to come down. So this, oops, not that one. This one, it's going to come straight down. E to extrude that out, and just continue tracing along the way. It looks like this is going to be all one stroke, so that'll be interesting. Now, again, people have done this before tracing text with curves, but I haven't seen anybody use it as a mask to reveal text, because you can actually reveal whatever sort of text you want to reveal. It doesn't even have to be a text file. And you're not limited to Blender's regular shape. And you don't have to come in and do a whole bunch of fancy shaping yourself. This is just, again, as a mask to cover everything up. And I think that is going to be really useful. I'm also putting these in places where I can see the stroke is changing thickness. So like right here, so if I have to actually change the thickness of the curve on these points, it's also another strategy to keep in mind. Okay, so there we have that stroke traced. And let's save it, and let's increase our depth. If we click and drag, it goes too fast, so I can press and hold Shift to go a little bit slower. And we'll just get it to where it looks like there's good margins, and then we'll adjust individually here. So like this is probably going to have to be scaled down a bit, and then scaled out, just so that that's not overlapping. Overlapping isn't always bad, but you could run into issues. Just going to have to play around with it case by case here. Let's do Alt S and scale that in. Okay, so this is the other way around. There we go. Scale that down. Here I have to be careful with this here and here. So I'm going to subdivide this, and then we'll take this one and do the same thing, just so that we don't accidentally have these other strokes being too visible. We might have to adjust that later. Same thing over here. Actually, just pull this in and scale that. Another thing that you can do is select one or multiple points. Press V to change the handle type. So if we choose free, now I can freely move the handles independent of each other. And so that might give you a better direction flow depending on what you're doing. And then you can also just test out some of the other handle types there. I'll let you play around with that though. Okay, I think that looks good for now. Let's save it. And now we can see, let's turn off the overlays, change the factor start. Ta-da! Okay, so I just took some time and I did the entire Happy Thanksgiving text, and I broke it up into these pieces here so you can see that. And you can see I renamed it over here. If you just double click, you can rename them. So I did 1 through 10 just as I went along this way, so right to left. And then I renamed them to like H1, H2, H3. So this is 3 strokes for the H, and then 1 for the appy. And then we've got 1 for the T, or at least this first stroke of the T. And then we have Hank. And then we have another part of the K. So I have K2, and then Skiv, and then ing here, and then this other curve here for the G as G2. So we've got this, and now we want to animate. So I'm going to start here at this first stroke here. So we're just going to do some keyframe animation. So if you're familiar with that, that will be useful. I'm not going to go in depth on keyframe animation. It's pretty straightforward, but this isn't an animation tutorial. So I'm going to select this, go to our data tab again, scroll down to our factor start and end. And I made a mistake when I was explaining this earlier. With the factor start, we're actually going to go with the factor end because everything's going to be black. And then when we drag this in, it's going to reveal it with the white. So we want the end factor here to be animated. And that's this little button here. So it's going to be at 0 first. So at frame 1, we're going to say 0. Just put that keyframe there, and you can see the keyframe is over here. And then I'm going to scroll in and middle mouse a little bit over here just to see more of the frames. And then I'm going to go to frame, actually I'm going to click and drag this, and we're going to put this on frame 10 because I don't want it to start right away. We'll start it on frame 10. And in fact, to get this started right, I'm going to select that, Shift D to duplicate, and put 1 on frame 1. So these two are the same frames, so they're identical. They're duplicates of each other, which is why you see this orange bar between them. If there was no orange bar, that means that they're different values, but these are the same values. Okay, so then I think I just want 5 frames for this stroke, so I'm going to go to frame 15, and then we'll take the end frame all the way up to 1, and then add a keyframe. And now you can see, if I scrub through the timeline, the effect that that has. I can also just press play with spacebar, and that's a good speed, I think. We can always adjust it later. Then on frame 16 is when I'm going to start the next one. So let's go to 16, and then this is going to be at 0, keyframe. And then we can go to frame 21 for that to last 5 frames as well. And now we have something that looks like this. Now the other keyframes look like they've disappeared just because we haven't selected this. So it'll only show the keyframes of whatever is selected, at least in the timeline. All right, so then after 21, we want 22. We will start this one at 0, 27 for 5 frames, and keyframe. So now we have this. And that may be too slow, but we can always speed it up either here in the timeline after we're all finished, or in the video sequence editor, we can do that as well. But let's move on. So on 28, I'm going to select this one. Now this one is going to be a longer stroke. So we're going to go more than 5 frames. So let's start with 0 first, and then let's see. I'm just going to go to 40 and see what that looks like. Just get a feel for it. Okay, that's a little bit too fast still. So I'm going to click and take this keyframe and drag it to 50. If you accidentally have both of them selected and they're moving together, then just press A twice to deselect everything, and then we can click and drag just a single one. Okay, I'm gonna keep it there, maybe 55. Okay, I like that better. Okay, and then we're gonna keep going. Let's go ahead and save it. 56, let's select this one. 0, and then this one will be 5 too. We'll just do 61 there. And then on 62, Hank will start. Oh, nope. There we go. Okay, and then let's just see. Let's go to 75 and take a look at what that looks like. Okay, maybe 80. Okay, I like that. Okay, so 81. We start with this one. Let's just go to 90. I'm just picking these frames by random and just seeing how I like the animation. That one could be shorter, maybe. Yeah, that's about right. Okay, take this one. That might be too fast. Yeah, let's go to 100. Yeah, okay. That still might be too fast, but I'm going to keep it there. And then with the ing, let's go. Now I know that's going to be too fast. Let's bring that to 20. Okay, and then the last one, I'm going to start here, just because as I'm scrubbing through, you can see it starts to meet this next piece right here at frame 115. So I'll just select that one, and then that's when this will be 0. And then we'll see what that looks like. You know, and I'm gonna, let's see, let's just take this and pull that out a little bit more. And then we'll have to adjust this one as well. So this one will be on frame 26. That's when that one will start. So I'm going to select both of those by shift selecting, then G to grab. I like that slower at the end because the pen is kind of like doing its last final flare. And we could even come here and make this go a little bit faster all the way to here and put a keyframe here. Where is it? Right here at 0.754. And then we can take these two and pull them in a little bit, I think, because then it will be faster until it reaches this one, and then this one will be a little bit slower. And then we can even pull this out maybe a little bit more. Yeah, so it's like it just slows down at the end. Of course, since we moved that one, we'll have to adjust this one as well right here. That'll start to come in right here. Yeah, nice little flare at the end there with the slowing down of the curls. All right, that was pretty easy, pretty straightforward, right? But we need to do one more thing, and that is to give the dots on the eyes. And so apparently I was actually just slightly in user perspective like this. That's why we didn't see the grid. I'm going to go into top mode by pressing 7, and then we see the grid, and I am just going to uncheck the grid like we did last time. I think that's what I did last time. I'm not entirely sure, but just so that it gets rid of that clutter and we don't need it. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is press Shift A and then add in a circle. You could do a curve as well, but you don't really need to. I like adding the circle because we can open this up over here and change the vertices to, I'm going to do 6, and then I'm going to change the fill type to N-gon. Okay, and then we can close that and then scale this down, and you can see what that looks like. I'm also going to press GZ and 0.1 to bring that up on the Z-axis just above everything else that we have. And there we go. So now we can just scale it over like that. And we can also rotate it if we need to. Okay, I'm going to press Control A to apply the scale, and then Shift D to copy this one there. Now we need to animate these, and the easiest way that I know how to do this, we could either scale them or move them. And I'm just going to move them because we can see what's going on. And so we don't want them to be visible, obviously, before the handwriting is done. So let's go maybe when the curves are maybe almost finished. So something like this, 122. And then I will select this one. And the way we make a keyframe here is we can just press I, and that will make our keyframe for us. Now we can also press N to open up this, and this is the keyframe that it's made. And to be honest, we don't need all of these, so I'm just going to undo that. And I'm just going to hover my mouse over the location and just press I, and then it will only do it on the location because we're only going to be moving them. And so let's do, and by the way, to pan back and forth, I'm holding down Shift. I don't have my screencast keys on, so hold down Shift and middle mouse to do that while you're in top mode. Okay, so let's go back one frame, and then I'm going to take this and just move it off the page anywhere over here on the side. Add that keyframe again. What that does is it pops it into place right away. So basically just like you're dotting that I. Okay, but then it's going to go in order, so it's going to go this one, and then we'll just say on frame 26, it's right here, so I. And I like to go backwards here because we already have these in place, so we want these in place at the end, so I have to go backwards in order to make the correct keyframe. Okay, so they start off screen and then they immediately jump on at the end. Yeah, that's actually good. If I play this, I like that. Like just as these curls are finishing, we have the dot dot on the eyes. Okay, so now we have our full animation. Let's just watch the full thing here. That's not too bad. If I was doing this for production, I might spend a little bit more time tweaking the pacing of it, but we are good for now. Okay, so now it is time to make the mask, and we just need to give this a black and white color. And to do that, let's start with the background. I'm going to take this background, we're going to move it down a little bit. So I'm just going to press GZ and then 0.1 and then type the negative. And it doesn't even need to be that far. Maybe I'll just say, I'll undo that and say GZ minus 0.01. Yeah, just something like that, because we're going to duplicate it with Shift D, right click, and we're going to say GZ 0.01. And then that will be right back up on the 0 plane there. But this one we're going to change the color to. So this one, we've got my card. We're going to change the name to black. And then we can come down here to the material tab because we need to actually make it black. Right now we have just one material that's applied to both of these. So let's come over here and click the X to get rid of that. Let's click New, call this black. And then with the surface, we're going to change this to an emission. We're going to change the color. Drag that all the way down to black. And I'm not entirely sure why that's not changing it to black. It should be. So we can now come to Material Preview, but before I do that, I'm going to save it because every time in 4.3 I change to Material Preview mode first, it just takes forever. Oh, and it didn't this time, so that's great. Maybe it's because I've already done it a couple times. I don't know why it takes forever. But there we go. Now we have the black background. And then our white text is going to go over that. And it already looks sort of white, but that's just because it doesn't have a material, and that's kind of Blender's default. So let's actually come in here and take the first one. We're going to actually copy it from the black. So we're just going to select it as black and then click this 2 button. And that will create a duplicate. So you can see now we have 2 black colors. I'm going to title this white and then change the color to white. There we go. And let's go into top mode again here. And because it's an emission, you can see it's not reflecting anything. You can see the default is kind of reflecting the world. So that's why it looks different. So we're going to just take this one. Actually, an easier way is in the outliner. Select the first one and then shift select all of the other curves. And now everything is selected with this one being the active one, which has the white color already applied. And then in the viewport, press Control L and then say Link Materials, and then they all have the same white material. Oh, I forgot about these two, so let's take those, Shift Select, and then we can Shift Select any of these, Control L, Link Materials. There we go. And if we disable overlays, we can view our animation again. Okay, so it's a little bit wonky as far as the pacing goes, but again, I don't care. I'm not going to focus on that now. You can tweak that to your heart's desire. All I care about right now is the black and white mask, and we have it. So let's save it. And now let's render this puppy out, or turkey out. Let's render this turkey out, this Thanksgiving turkey. But before we render, I'm going to show you a little technique that I learned. So let's come up here to Scene. This is going to be our VSE, the video sequence editor, because that's what we have all of our original stuff on over here. And then this one's going to be the 3D. So I'm going to type 3D workspace here. And so we've got video editing, we've got our masking, and then we've got our rendering. Now this is going to be VSE render. So I'll just say VSE render. And then I'm going to duplicate this one and then call this 3D render. And this will make sense in just a minute. I'm going to right click, reorder to back. So for the 3D and the 3D render, we're going to create a separate scene specifically just for these workspaces. So if we come over here, we can look at our options for new scene. We can make a completely new scene. We can do a copy settings, linked copy, or full copy. I don't want a full copy, and I don't want to copy just the settings. I want a linked copy. Basically what that's going to do is it's going to link it, meaning it's not going to copy any of the objects that we have. It's going to be all the same 3D objects that we have, everything here. You see, if it had copied it, you would have .001 on the end of all of these names. So now it's linked, and I think that if I change anything for these original curves or any of these original objects, it'll affect it in both scenes. But if I add something new to either of the scenes, then that doesn't cross over, unless there's some way you can refresh that, which I'm not sure. Anyway, that doesn't matter. What matters is we're just going to say, we're going to call this 3D because this is going to be for our 3D rendering. So with this workspace selected, I'm going to click the pin button on the 3D. I'm also going to do that for the 3D render. And then for the video editing, I don't need to pin this, but I can just come over here and do VSE. Although it might be a good idea to pin this and then mask. Yeah, I guess we'll do that as well. And VSE render, just so all the workspaces are pinned to the proper scene. So if I switch to the 3D render, it automatically changes the scene. If I go back to video editing, it automatically changes it back to the VSE scene. And as I said, we're doing this for rendering so that we can have 2 different render modes for different types of things we want to render out. So for the VSE render, we're using JPEG now, but remember, we actually exported quite a few PNGs since they have the transparency for the overlays. And so just for demonstration, the VSE render, we're going to say that this is going to be PNG with an RGBA like we did before. And then we're going to also change this eventually to a movie or an FFmpeg. But when I come back to my 3D render, I actually want this to stay at JPEG because what we're going to render out here is going to be a JPEG. And this way I don't have to change my render settings each time I change the workspace I want to render from. So I hope that makes sense. So let's get started rendering out an image sequence here. This one was for my practice, so I'm just going to // there. Click to open the folder, and then I just created a new image sequence folder, and I'm going to do another image sequence just because we might create multiple. So IMSQ text animation, and then go in here, and then down here we'll say text anim _ f enter enter. And the F stands for frames because that's what will be put automatically at the end here. As long as we have file extensions checked, that's fine. JPEG, RGB, 100%, that's fine. We could technically change this to black and white, but nah. And I always uncheck overwrite initially, just in case. And then color management, we went sRGB standard, which is good. You can change that here, follow scene. If you need to change it, you can just click override. And then let's see, we want to uncheck the sequencer and compositor here because we're not using either of those. And if you have sequencer checked, it's going to take precedence. So it's going to overwrite everything and you'll wonder why you aren't seeing anything. And that's another thing that we can have separate. So in the VSE render, we absolutely want the sequencer checked. But in the 3D render, we don't. So coming over here, we had set this up last time where we have two panes open. This is our 3D view. If I middle mouse, you can see this is just the 3D. And we actually don't want, let's see, let's bring down another area to the outliner just so I can quick hide things here. We don't need to see my card. I can just get rid of that. I think I want everything else. Okay, but I did forget. We need to actually add in a camera. So let's go back to the 3D workspace and let's show the overlays here. Make sure that the 3D cursor is in the very center of the world origin. Shift S and then cursor to world origin. Come up here to view, align view, and then center view to cursor. Now we can add in a camera and you can see it lined up perfectly here, or so it looks like in this view, but if we see, it's actually right here. But what I like to do again is in top mode, we can scroll in here a bit and then align that view to center on the cursor in the middle there. And then with the camera selected, Control-Alt-0, and that will bring the camera over to where our current view is. And since we centered on the camera, it should still be straight up and down on that Z-axis, like this. Yep, so now it's just above all of our stuff here. So now 0 back into the camera mode. With the camera selected, let's go to the data properties here, change perspective to orthographic, and then change the orthographic scale to 1. And it should fit perfectly as long as the output render resolution is the same as the card that we had imported, and as long as the card is on the world origin. So again, make sure you're in camera mode, and that's just by pressing 0. You can also press this button here, and we can disable overlays and see our handiwork here. Okay, I also want to end after all of this ends here. So we can actually select everything, and then it'll show us the last keyframe. So we just want to end it here at the last keyframe, which is frame 135. I'm going to hover over here, press Control-C, and then Control-V to paste that there. Middle mouse button and scroll in. Let's save it. Okay, now back in the 3D render workspace, we have this, and let's center this here again. Now I can press F12, and it should show everything here. Again, if it doesn't, you need to check to make sure sequencer is not checked or compositing, and you need to make sure you have a camera that is lined up properly. And then we can just go to random frames and make sure that these match. So this is our 3D view, remember, in our camera mode, and then this is the render results. So you also have to select render result up here. Okay, and that looks good. So again, let's save it, and we should be ready to render because we have our image sequence path. We have everything set up the way we want. It's rendering just fine, so all we have to do is come up here to render and then render animation, or the shortcut is Control F12. And now it's going to run through all of our frames. and render each one out as an individual image, and then we'll import that into the video sequence editor as an image sequence. Okay, it's done. Let's go back to the video editing workspace here, and let's just come over here. And you can see I have my image sequence right here. So I'm just gonna select all of them and click and drag, and you can do this straight away in Blender 4.3, which is really nice. And now we have this animation here. Awesome. Okay, so remember we are going to use this text animation as a mask for the text, of course. So I'm going to take the text over here and put it on top, and then we're just take the text animation and put it right over that text. And if you watched the last video, we're going to do it the same way we did this over here. So select the text and then add in a mask, which we already have, but we need to specify the mask, which is our new text animation. And now if we hide the text animation, we have a blank card, or at least blank from text, and now we have the text being revealed. Okay, but we need to take all of these and make them the same length so that we can go through the whole animation. But now we have something that looks like this. And we probably want to extend it beyond the bounds here, boundaries, just so we can see it a little bit longer. Ta-da! All right. And essentially what's happening is just we're watching our masks come in. So everything that is black is invisible. So that means everything is invisible at first, and then as the white starts coming in, it's revealing the text that's behind it. And if I unhide that and just bring the opacity down just a little bit, you can kind of see both of them here. And so what's good about this method is the fact that we don't have to copy exactly the font or the text itself. We just have to cover it in order to reveal it with the mask. And that could be any type of text. It could be any font. It could be any image. I mean, we could technically even do it with any of the images here and just create a little black and white animation to reveal the turkey or the pumpkins or any of that. So let's bring the opacity all the way up again and hide that and pull this down. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Let's just make these the frame range here. So if we go to view, range, and then set frame range to strips, it'll set the frame range to any strips I have selected. And now we can just loop through that and then hover our mouse over here, press Control Spacebar so that we can see this in full screen. So now it's just going to loop through and we can see our handiwork here like so. Okay, we can go back to previous. So as a bonus, since we have all of these other elements separated as PNGs themselves, we could even do a little bit of animation to make them pop in or fly in. So let's go ahead and do that quick. Again, this isn't an animation tutorial, but I'll show you a couple little tricks here. Actually, let's take the text and put it with that here. And then here, this is for the top leaves. So let's just make the top leaves come down as an animation. So let's see, open up transform, and currently the position is 0, which is good, so we can remember that. So I'm just gonna, in tweak mode up here, just take these and pull them straight up on the Y, just so they're out of frame. Let's go ahead and create a keyframe over here on the Y axis. Okay, and now we see only the time. Press Control T to toggle back and forth between time and frames. And so the frame, I'm going to go, we'll just say, let's see, 50. Let's just try that. And then we'll say 0 for that, and then the keyframe, and let's see what that looks like. Okay, that might be a little too fast. Let's pull up our timeline over here. Let's drag that to 60 and see what that looks like. That's better. I like that. All right, and let's have these three things just kind of scale up into the frame. So our turkey is going to start at a scale of 0. Right now it's at 1, so let's just go ahead and type 0. We have to add a keyframe both for the X and the Y. And then let's, I guess, first on 60 again, or 70, or maybe 50. We'll try 60 first. And then this will be 1. It'll come in at 1 keyframe. And then let's just see what that looks like. Okay. I don't like it coming in at the same time. Let's make it a little bit shorter here. So let's just say 50. So it'll beat those leaves up here. But you can see it's coming in from the very center. And the reason for that is because when we save the PNG out, we didn't save the turkey in the center of the view. But there's a quick hack that you can do to make the center to put it right in the middle of the turkey. And that is if I change the origin. So I can change the origin, and you can see that little origin. You have to have the overlays on to see that. And then, of course, make sure image outline is selected, because if you don't have the image outline selected, you won't see the origin point. But we're going to pull the origin point, and we're going to put it right in the middle of the turkey. And now you can see when it scales from that point. So we're going to do the same thing with both of the pumpkins. So let's take the origin point and just move that down. And for this one also, we'll take that one and center that. Awesome. So I'm going to actually start scaling after the turkey starts coming in. Then we're going to go with this one. So pumpkin 1, I'll add a keyframe at 0 here. And then maybe 55, say it's 1. And then for pumpkin 2, let's see, we'll start it at 50, I guess. 0. And then we'll say 65 will be where it is fully in. So now we have something that looks like this. And that's not the greatest thing in the world, but again, if you want more elegance and more finesse, you'll have to work on this a little bit more. But for our purposes, it is just fine. And then we can say, before the last pumpkin comes in, I think maybe at 58, we can bring this text animation over until we start to see that stroke being started. So something like this. And ta-da! If you wanted the text to go even faster, you could just select both of these, Control G to put them in a meta strip. Make sure that it's above everything else. Then we can select it, Shift A to add in a effect strip, N effect strip, speed control. Then take the end, don't take the beginning, just change the end. If you change the beginning, it's going to screw everything up. Take the end and pull it in, and that's going to speed it up. That's too fast, maybe out a little bit like that. And that's maybe still also a little too fast. That's not too bad. It's just personal preference there. I think I like the original, so I'm just going to press Control Alt G to get rid of that meta strip, and we'll just keep it like that. So there you go. Happy Thanksgiving. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving with family and friends. I hope it's filled with warmth and food and drinks and celebration and just thoughtful, prayerful reflectiveness on life and the things that we've been given. So have a good holiday, and you'll see me in the next one.